Okay, thinking and intelligence in particular. Okay, so you see here we had our I guess I'm going to cut that down. So as we said, this notion of cognitive psychology is a pretty broad area, incorporating perception, attention, memory. In particular, we see that the study of cognition has been particularly prevalent in work in artificial intelligence, because if you're going to create artificial intelligence, you kind of have to understand how the original intelligence worked, right? I mean, what would be the point of making a fake thing that doesn't imitate the real thing, right? So fascinating. In fact, in my postdoctorate, one of my major projects was to write a computer program that would make decisions the same way that human beings made decisions in my doctoral work, right? So I brought all of the actual human behavior and then programmed the computer to replicate what the humans had done. So turn it on a computer, make a series of decisions, and make decisions just like human beings make decisions. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay. So at the key of all cognition is a concept. That ties the entire cognitive structure together. Without concepts, you would have to, every time you walked into a room, you'd have to discover what every single object was and what that object did. Okay? You would be helpless. You would be an infant for the rest of your life. Okay? But because we have concepts, it allows us to take knowledge that I have already generated and move it to a new situation. Okay? So very cool. Language, as I say, I teach, in some of my upper level courses, a common theme is, so what is it that makes human beings different from other animals? Just everything you come across is like, nope, animals do that, nope, animals do that, nope, animals do that. And the only place that I can ever get someplace that is in language. Okay? Language is the only thing that I can find that truly separates human beings from other animals. Otherwise, we're just the same. Huh? Language and thought was an interesting part of our conversation last week, in this notion that the language we speak determines how we think. So if we're speaking in one language, it will have certain words or concepts or ideas that might not exist in another language, and therefore when we speak in two different languages, we can think in two different ways. We started on problem solving a little bit. And we said that there's three basic ways that we solve problems. And that is trial and error, but that's not very efficient. That's just like close your eyes and just start doing stuff. Algorithms, which are much more methodical or systematic. Okay? Rather than just wandering randomly, you set a path. You say, first I'm going to go up one aisle, down, up, down, up, down. It guarantees you will solve the problem, but it's not necessarily efficient. Okay? Not necessarily the best answer. Heuristics, you would be like, well, if I'm looking for fruit juice, then I ought to look for stuff that's similar to fruit juice and go there. Something similar. We find that algorithms guarantee you solve a problem. Heuristics do not guarantee, and there are some spectacular mistakes that are made with heuristics. Spectacular. But what happens is, all day long, you are making decisions. Okay? And I'm going to oversell it because my PhD program was literally judgment and choice. So clearly, we're right in my ballpark. And all day long, when you don't even know you're making decisions, you're driving your car, and there's a car next to you, and out of the corner of your eye, it sort of feels like maybe they're drifting into your lane. You know what I mean? And you got to that's how fast you have to make a decision. You cannot stop and, let me perform an algorithm and a procedure, let me think about, no, bam, boom. You have to make decisions in an instant, and inevitably making decisions in an instant leads to problems, right? It leads to mistakes. So, we started talking about some of the problems here with problem solving, including mental sets, right? We think about the world in some preset ways. We can't move on from that. And so here's where we left off. It's a heuristic that we commonly use when we have to make a judgment. And we like, is something common? Has it happened a lot? The availability heuristic is something that, in fact, we carry this from our ancestral past. If I turn inside my brain and think, and I am able to come up with lots of examples and lots of memories of something, then it must be frequent. It must happen often. Okay, you get the idea? I mean, you have stronger memories of things that have happened more often. Makes sense. So what happens is that here in a casino, what they do is they fool with you. They mess with you, because if you've ever played in a casino, okay, although they've changed the rules for sure, but what happens is you put your money in, and then you pull the little handle, and when you win, it is like, ba, 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 ba. When you do not win, it is silent, and you move on to the next pull. Okay? So you remember the times you win, but you do not remember the times that you did not win. Gotcha? So it fools you into thinking that winning is more common than it is. Right? So we turn inside of our brain, and do I have a good memory? I would argue that this availability heuristic is what stole my children's childhood. Okay? Now, I don't know about you all, but when I was a kid, it was just like, go outside, do whatever you want to do. It doesn't, but y'all are too young, but there was this girl named Elizabeth Smart. Okay? She was, I don't remember where, California, I think. She was kidnapped from her own bedroom. And CNN and all the news networks just constantly blanket coverage on Elizabeth Smart, just blanket coverage. So it fooled a lot of people, including my wife, into thinking that kidnapping of children was a very common occurrence, because when I look inside of my brain, I have strong memories about this. Okay? It's not a strong memory because it happened very many times. It's a strong memory because the news networks have to fill 24 hours a day with programming. Gotcha? 24 hours a day. So you have a strong memory, but for the wrong reason. All right? You got to remember, a human being before the invention of television, your memories are based on what you've literally seen. Okay? So it got to the point where, I mean, honestly, it's not just my wife, it's all of society. Nowadays, if you let your kid walk to school, Child Protective Services will come to your house and say, why are you abandon your child? Are you kidding me? The school is 2 blocks away, he's 8 years old, he knows the way, all right, he's not stupid, right? I mean, I was walking to school at 5 years old. Of course I was. Shit, I was walking to school in the dark, in the snow at 5. Why wouldn't I be? Okay? I mean, I used to walk home from the mall when I was like 8 years old, and it was across town. Well, of course, why wouldn't you? Right? So, it has stolen children's childhoods. It really has. You can't go anywhere, can't do anything, you might get kidnapped. And then to make it even worse, oh my God, when I was up in Keller ISD a couple of years ago, oh my God, there's this giant alert. Oh, this boy was, somebody tried to yank him on his way to the bus stop, and all of this alert, and then you know what they found out? The kid was late, and he didn't want to get in trouble, so he lied and said that somebody tried to kidnap him, because he felt that he wouldn't get in trouble for being late. Ah, Lord Almighty. So what happens is that as a society, we make stupid decisions, not just individual people, but that we as a society, we invest in things that don't make sense. Okay? You know how much money that is, if you want to buy a new car, do you know how much money is put into seat belts and airbags and all of these different things, right? Well, you know what's going to be more likely to kill you than a car accident? Stomach cancer. Yep, stomach cancer is more likely. Yet how much money are we spending on stomach cancer prevention? Nothing. Because when people die of stomach cancer, it's very quiet, it's in somebody's home, and it's simply a number on a page. What happens when somebody dies in an automobile accident? It's splashed on the news, it's front page covered, that sells stories. So we as a society make stupid decisions because we don't know what's true. Another problem with making decisions is this overconfidence. Now, it's amazing. They've done these studies where they ask people questions, very simple questions, like, what is the capital of North Dakota? You're like, Bismarck? I don't know if that's true. How confident are you? I am 100% confident. And it turns out they compared how correct people were to how confident they were. And there was a complete disconnect. I mean, when people said that they were 100%, I am 100% confident, they were correct about 85% of the time. Okay? When people were 99% confident, they're right about 70% of the time. Right? You see that's kind of a problem when you truly and utterly. Can you imagine this might have a problem when you're having an argument with somebody and you're both 100% confident that what you believe is true? It's not, okay? Very problematic. Another thing that influences decision making is the way you ask your question, okay? Because it turns out that you can ask the exact same question and just change the words a little bit and get radically different results. Okay? So, here they just ask people. They ask people, do you get headaches frequently? And if so, how often? And people say, 2.2 times a week. Do you get headaches occasionally? If so, how often? The exact same people say 0.7 times a week. All right? Or they have people watch a movie. And if you ask them after watching a movie, how long was the movie? It was 130 minutes. If you ask them how short was the movie, it was 100 minutes. I'm asking you this, just turn inside your brain and retrieve the memory of the length of the movie, right? But I simply use these individual words, and I can completely flip the way that you understand the world around you. Okay? And this is an interesting thing, because if you ask Americans, should the federal government censor what goes on television? Americans say, no, do not censor television. Should the government regulate what goes on television? Oh, definitely, says most Americans. Okay? So the majority of Americans think that the government should regulate what goes on television, but only a small handful think that the government should censor. So what's the difference between censor and regulate? Actually nothing. It's the same word, okay? But one is a loaded word, and one is not. Do animals think? Yeah, absolutely. A little different than we do, that's for sure. Here's Alex. Alex, he died not too long ago. Poor Alex. He was able to do some fairly complex things with manipulating symbols. He could do, bigger, smaller. He could make comparisons. But just like I had talked about with the chimpanzees the other day, Alex had, 10 hours of training every day. So it's like, what is the maximum capacity of an animal if given intense training? All right? What do animals actually do? And all of a sudden, there's a big disconnect between them, right? Just because they have this physical capacity doesn't mean they do it. This, however, was one of my favorite studies. It's Wolfgang Kohler. He's studying chimpanzees, and he sets them up with a bunch of problems to solve. Okay? In these problems, what happens is he puts, in this case, a banana, right? And it's out of reach. And so the monkeys, they'll be like, and fail, right? And then they'll be like, oh, okay, I really didn't want it anyway, okay? And they go sit in the corner and pretend it's not there. And then these monkeys, after 30 minutes or an hour or something, you can literally see the light bulb come on. You know that moment? Ding! I have it. You can see these monkeys just like, oh my God, I know now. And they stand up and boom, they solve the problem. So in this case, the banana was really high, and this monkey is smarter than I am. I'm going to tell you that. I don't know if this monkey is pole vaulting or if he put it on the ground and climbed it really fast. Okay? Because you know how I would have solved it? I would have picked this up and I would have gone for a swing, all right? I suspect that would not have been effective at the bananas, okay? So smart monkey. Or here's a monkey, look at this. Desperate, and it's the same thing. Goes over in the corner, sits there, doesn't have a clue what's going on until a light bulb moment. And then bing, he comes back, bing, 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 bing. And I love this one. It's like a supervisor down there, you know, inspecting the product. I love it. Or another one here where the monkey has to fit some bamboo poles together to make a longer pole to reach far outside of the enclosure there. So, yeah, definitely, animals can definitely think. There's no question. Yeah. My dog, actually dogs are pretty darn smart. Dogs are the only animals that have exhibited, and this is only because dogs evolved alongside human beings. You know, what you can do is, let's say, sometimes with you're eating breakfast and there's a part of it that's maybe not so hot, so you toss it on the floor for the dog, okay? Most of the time the dog caught it, but you know what, once in a while, he hears it, he heard it hit the ground, he knows it, but he doesn't know where it is. He looks to me, okay? I point. He follows my eyes, he follows my finger, and he locates the object. No other animal can do that. No other animal can take that kind of direction where you point and they just follow and they go. So it's a pretty amazing skill what the dog does there. He's able to take my perspective, to see the world from my point of view. Right? Pretty impressive skill set. Okay? But most animals lack this. This is literally called theory of mind. This ability to view the world from another's perspective. And we'll talk more about that when we get into development. But absolutely, most other animals, they just, like, say for example, a parakeet. They can't even comprehend a mirror. If you got a parakeet and you're, oh, my parakeet is sad and lonely, get a mirror. You don't have to get a second bird. You just don't. They'll just truly believe forever that there's another bird there. Okay? And it works well with babies too, by the way. Before babies have developed this thing called theory of mind, you can play the game. It's called Baby in the Mirror. All right. So all you got to do is go over. How's the baby in the mirror today? And you go, oh, go buddy, go buddy. And they believe there's another kid back there. Like, nobody. There's a. Okay. All right. So I want to move into something here today. So we've kind of moved past kind of traditional thinking per se, moving into intelligence. Intelligence is a very difficult thing to work with because nobody can necessarily agree on what it is. I mean, it doesn't exist for sure, right? Give me 2 cups of intelligence. You ain't going to get a cup of intelligence. So it doesn't have existence. And the way that different people define and understand it is different, right? There's no clear set, agreed upon definition for it, all right? This guy has the ability to go through the forest and figure out which plants do which stuff. That's pretty good, but I guarantee you, take this guy and ask him to do 3 plus 7. Oh, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Okay? 3 plus 7? My first grader can do 3 plus 7. I'm not a first grader. One of my kids could do 3 plus 7. Okay? But yet, we consider him to be pretty smart. Right? He's smart. He's got intelligence. One of the most intelligent people I ever saw, it was crazy. One time, I had these trees that were right on the corner of my house. Okay? 2 of them. They were hanging over the neighbor's house. I can't do this. I can't take these down. It's just way too much. This guy comes out, and he's like, okay, $200, I'll take down the trees. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Okay? Especially if you hire an arborist, they're going to give you like $3 grand just to walk in the door. Okay, $200. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking I scammed this guy. And he just, I feel fairly confident that he did not make it past the 3rd grade. I'm pretty confident that that's true, all right? But this dude he stands there underneath my tree, and he just looks for and he's off, all right? He shimmies up my tree, doesn't even use a ladder, just goes straight up the tree, and then he's got rope and tackle, and he's got a chainsaw, and he's going and he's throwing stuff around, and then all of a sudden the branch this big around, which was hanging over my neighbor's house, and he's got it just hanging in the air, and it just dropped. I was like, what the hell? How does he do that? He's envisioned it. He picked the dude was out of there in an hour and a half, something like that. I paid the dude gladly $200 for an hour and a half's work. I got a PhD. There's no way I'm going to earn $200 in an hour and a half. Okay? So who's the sucker here? Okay? So in that, I'd say that dude was pretty damn smart. He was not educated, but he was damn smart. Okay? So we need to be careful that intelligence is not tied into education. It's just not the same thing. Personally, I like to try to come up with a notion of intelligence in that the world throws a lot of problems at you. Can you solve those problems? Okay? Can you adapt to your environment? So in some kind of a way, this is an extension on evolution. Can you adapt? All right? Can you survive? Intelligence has been incredibly controversial for a very, very big reason. The United States in particular has been considered the land of opportunity. Right? Throughout the 1800s, as Europe was in these monarchies, and if you're a peasant in Europe, then you're never going to be successful, you can't succeed, your birth is your life. But America was different. We're a land, anybody can become successful in America. Okay? Anybody. Well, here's the notion that Spearman put together, and it's just pretty well backed up. He says, when a child is born, okay, what's going to happen is their genetics, egg meets sperm, genetics are going to set some kind of a level of intelligence we're going to call G, a generalized intelligence of sorts, okay? And this G is going to be like, it's going to limit what a child can do, okay? And so this child then will grow up in a very particular house, and what's going to happen is they're going to get unique exposure to things like math skills. This will be their ability in math, or math intelligence or something. And you know what? In this kid's house, they did the crossword puzzles all the time. So look at that. This kid's verbal is up here somewhere. Meanwhile, different researchers are going to have exactly what these are and how many they're going to be. But you see, all of these things are kind of connected right here. They're all tied to this potential. Okay? You're not really ever going to get up here. It's just not going to happen, right? It just isn't. Because this is somewhat of a leash, right? Like your dog can't go any further than the leash, right? It's a limits. And here's the deal. We also hear things in this country such as, every child has a special talent, right? Something like that. So let's check out this kid. I always use the word Jimmy for some reason. Jimmy, I don't know what it was. When egg met sperm, this is Jimmy's G. Huh? Got it? And so Jimmy also was exposed to a unique home with different exposures and experiences, etc. All tied into this G. Every child has a special talent. There's Jimmy's special talent. Let's bring it around. Jimmy's special talent barely exceeds the worst skill set of this person right here. See that? That's Jimmy's maximum. And so what happens is that, again, in your generation, what do I know? In my generation, a common phrase, anybody can grow up to be president. No, I'm sorry. Little Jimmy was pretty much fucked from the beginning. There is no way Jimmy is going to be president, okay? If Jimmy works his ass off, will potentially be able to run the checkout counter at the grocery store. Maybe. Probably not, though, okay? Because Jimmy just didn't get what he needed to start from. And people don't like this. People don't like this. It's very controversial because, there's a whole political party out there, and I'm not going to be political, but they truly believe if you're poor, you just don't work hard enough. Okay? Anybody can be successful. The reason I am successful is I worked hard and I'm smart and I worked for it. You could too if you just got off your ass. No, I'm sorry. Jimmy can never succeed in that way. It is not possible. We don't like it in America for a variety of reasons. Another reason is we like to think the world is fair. Okay? It is not fair. That is what this implies. And so this is a very controversial idea, but research backs it up. That your genetics gives you this G, which is a potential of sorts. The individual experiences across your lifetime determine exactly what these specific ones will look like, but this G will somehow lock you in. You see that? Kind of stick you to it. So it's a cool idea. It's a neat idea, and the evidence backs it up, but it's become very, very controversial. Some people argue that there are cases, like Jimmy here, where this does happen. Okay? Here's a guy, Stephen Wiltshire. Okay? This guy, you know what? I mean, his art skills are through the roof. He flew, I believe this is, he flew over the city of London in a helicopter, lands, and he just draws this entire mural of the entire landscape of the city of London. Now, he has absolutely no mathematical ability, so he can't do the math involved in how to calculate how to sell his artwork. He doesn't know how to manage the business. He can't even cross the street without somebody holding his hand. Okay? So it's kind of an odd situation, but some people say that this is evidence that this whole idea is bullshit. Okay? I disagree, because the majority of the time you find a savant. You know what you do is sometimes you get savants, and they'll do things just crazy. It's like, so I'm going to give you a date, and then you tell me the day of the week. Oh, July 18th, 1604, Thursday. And they'll be 100% accurate. They will tell you the day of the week of any day in history. And you're like, what the hell? But you know what the truth is? That person just religiously studies calendars all day long. That's just they obsess over looking at calendars. So if you go back to the whole definition of intelligence, the ability to adapt and solve problems, does that really help you adapt to anything? That don't make you smart, okay? That doesn't. And this guy, it doesn't, I mean, if you can't even do the business necessary to make money from your artwork, does it really help you to adapt? I don't know. I mean, I'd say not, all right? So I don't necessarily have any problem with these occasional individual savant cases. Okay? So other people have said, look, I mean, there's been some question about exactly what these will look like. This basic idea is fairly well agreed upon in psychology, but exactly how many of these and what they're going to look like are still up in the air. Okay? So here's a guy, Sternberg, has come up with analytical versus practical versus creative intelligence, and finding that these are definitely not the same. All right? And part of the problem that I personally have, and I got to be careful because if I'm not, I go on a giant rant, that the No Child Left Behind Act has failed the United States immensely. And right here we can point to it. There are clearly three aspects of intelligence which are interrelated. And it is this and only this that is the subject, what No Child Left Behind is about. Okay? We're not asking for creativity. We're not asking for common sense. I mean, we're not. This. Intelligence like this it's of no good. I mean, I just don't understand, because, you know, this cell phone has more facts in it than you will ever have in your brain. So knowing a bunch of facts does not impress me. Unless you are going to become a Jeopardy champion, I don't see that as being any way, shape, or form an adaptive thing. Okay? You must be able to take that knowledge and use it in some way to solve, or some unique way, to solve problems, to adapt to your environment. So, I'm not happy with that. There is clearly some intelligence factors here. We find financial, here, intelligence score, income. And so we see here that there is a slight trend, that there is kind of a little bit, the higher your intelligence score, the kind of, can you kind of sort of see one there? It's not very good though. And if we, but then again, I would also criticize that we as a society often use income as the only measure of success, right? That there are many ways to measure whether or not a person is a success, and I would argue, in fact, that income is not one of the ways. It is, in my opinion, but I'm a psychology professor, not a business student, right? So if you're in the business school, then yes, the more income you are, the more successful you are, right? Anyway, not true, not true, not true. We could perhaps talk differences between social intelligence and emotional intelligence, these kinds of things. So in any traditional type of an intelligence test would never capture these things. And clearly the ability to navigate social situations is hugely adaptive. But there is no test. Every single test is going to miss this type of adaptive behaviors. But again, the one that I find the most important is creativity, because a whole pile of facts is different than using them for a good purpose, right? So creativity is also called divergent thinking. And the idea is that, and it's very similar to when we talk about functional fixedness, and we said, you know, you're scrambling around the house to find a screwdriver, and then you're like, you know, a butter knife would just solve the problem pretty easy, right? So why not just use a butter knife? So the ability to use things and stuff. And so, and it's hard to teach this kind of thing. One time, I'll admit, I'll throw my son under the bus, all right? So one day my son says to me, oh, the light bulb in my room is burned out. And I said, then change it. Right? I mean, why are you telling me? You know, the box is in the garage. Okay? And he says, I don't know how. I was like, oh shit, that was my come to Jesus moment. All right? I gotta do something about this. I gotta solve this. So I decided I was going to put his feet to the fire. So I had outside of my backyard, I had a slab, a concrete slab. And I decided I was going to frame up a green room. All right, I'm going to build a green room over the top of the slab. And my son was just like, it was hard to get him to get out of bed in the morning, but that's teenager shit, right? But at every stage, he was like, how did you know what to do? And I'm like, what do you mean, how did I know what to do? I understand how tools work, and I know how, lumber works, so I don't know, how do you teach that to your kid? I don't know, but I thought maybe if I had him practice with me, it would work. I don't think so, all right? I think that he's a product of the No Child Left Behind Act. So creativity is huge. But what I actually found pretty interesting was, in addition to creativity, and this is a good story, Christopher Columbus, it can't be a true story, but it's a good story, so you have to run with it anyway. So he comes back from, doing his voyage. And he's sitting around the dinner table, and all of these other guys are just, you didn't do anything special. Anybody could have done that. Anybody could have gone. Why are you bragging? Why are you saying that you're something special? So he takes a hard-boiled egg, okay? And he says, okay, I want you to just stand it on its head. Okay, so people are trying, and of course it's rolling over, gets back to him. And he smashes it right on the table, and it stands right over. And they go, hey, anybody could have done that. And Columbus says, yeah, but you didn't. Okay? You get the moral of the story here. Being smart, being creative, but actually doing it. I like that too. Of course anybody could have done it, but you did not do it, okay? So, whatever. So anyway, how do you get a job done? You do it. That's hard. All right, so measuring intelligence becomes problematic because obviously we can't even agree what it is, okay? We're going to obviously admit things like musical abilities will never show up in a typical test. It just won't, okay? There's just no place for it, okay? So intelligence tests are designed to predict future performance of sorts. In fact, a very common intelligence test that many of you may have taken is an SAT or an ACT, okay? They are designed to predict your performance in college. That is the whole point of them, that the scores on this test are supposed to predict some future outcome. Okay? Some people that are more cynical, however, say an intelligence test measures whatever an intelligence test measures. I mean, it is what it is. Okay? It started very interesting in the 1800s. France put mandatory education into law. Now, all of a sudden, they had so many children that had never gone to formal education, right? And you've got all of these kids from the French countryside entering a public school system for the first time. They don't even know the rules like raising your hand, or they don't know any of that stuff, okay? And so these teachers would be like, okay, this kid is stupid, get him out of my room, okay? I cannot function in this room when there is one student that is just completely below everybody else. How can I function in this room? And so there was many teachers who were just labeling children as stupid. So the government of France hires this guy, Binet, and says, Binet, we want you to, because truly there are some children that should not be in a regular classroom. They just should not be, okay? So Binet, figure out which children should in fact be in a classroom and which ones should not be in a classroom. Okay? So he designs a test where what he does, he takes a bunch of children and he figures out, like he takes kids that are 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and he figures out what they know. And he basically created the average 5-year-old knows this much information. The average 6-year-old knows this. The average 7-year-old knows this type of a thing. And then he would take the children, figure out what they were capable of, and make comparisons. And he would say, you know, you have your mental age and your chronological age, what you actually are. Okay? And he looked for a difference there. He said if a child is 1 year behind, okay, their mental age is 1 year behind their chronological age, no problem, toss them in the classroom. If a child's mental age is 2 years behind their chronological age, they can still succeed in a regular classroom, but they're going to need some help. They're going to need an extra push, extra guidance. But if a child is 3 years behind, you have to put that kid in special ed, okay? Because that child will not benefit from that classroom. That material will be so far over that child's head, that child will be nothing but frustrated. That they will gain zero, if anything, it will harm them, okay? So he simply said, 3-year rule. If it's 3 years difference between the mental age and the chronological age, that child needs to be removed to a special setting, okay? He also made it very, very clear that he did not want to take this thing, this intelligence thing, and turn it into a number. He thought that was the worst idea in the world. That if I took this complex thing called intelligence and turned it into an individual number, that number would become the worth of a child. And he said children have many, many qualities to them. And this thing that we're looking at is just one part of a complicated child. If you were to quantify this intelligence thing, it will become a measure of what a child is worth. And so despite the fact that Binet so desperately did not want this to happen, you knew it was going to happen. And so William Stern took his notion of mental age, chronological age, divided the two, took it times 100. And so now the average IQ score is 100. Okay, so if a kid is 8 years old, is actually 8, they know the same as an average 8-year-old, take it across 100. So scores higher than 100 means children are above their age. Scores less than 100, they're below their age. Okay? So it turned out that Binet's test was actually picked up by Lewis Terman. Lewis Terman then, actually he buys it for $1 from Binet. Binet's just a generous guy. And then Terman uses it to make millions and millions. And he created the Stanford Binet, which was the most commonly used measure of intelligence for years. Yeah, yada. There is a relationship between SAT scores and IQ scores, absolutely. It's pretty strong. Blah, blah. Here, the common test that is used now is the Wechsler's. The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. It takes as an idea, it's going to establish multiple individual scores as well as a general score. Okay, so that's what's going to happen when it comes out of it. But we can see here that what happens is like here, because the idea is you want to grab as many different types of intelligence as you can get. Okay, so they have look at this. Put the pictures in a row. Put them in order. Okay, so first the kid runs out into the snow, then he starts to roll the ball, and then he puts the ball on top, and then he puts on the finishing touches. Right? You can do that, right? Probably put those in order. Tricky task. These are actually pretty fun, and I've got one of these in my office. I forgot to bring it in today, but they have dice basically with white and red triangles on them. And so what's going to happen is they're going to ask you, with all of these little blocks, recreate this image. And you got to kind of start flipping the blocks. And so you measure how long does it take for somebody to recreate an image like this. Or picture completion. Obviously we got a little puppy there, some kind of a puppy. Feels like it must be a wiener dog, but I can't tell. Digit symbol substitution. So, you know, whenever you see a triangle, put in a 1. And so you're going along here, and you have to do as fast as you can to go through here. Okay? But then they've got more verbally based stuff. This is more quantitatively based stuff. This is more verbally based stuff. And so they're going to be like, what day of the year is Independence Day? How are wool and cotton alike? If eggs cost 60 cents a dozen, what does one egg cost? Fools, joke's on you. You can't buy one egg, okay? Work like that, but you know. So you get the ideas here. And there's been some real arguments that intelligence tests are fundamentally biased. They are biased for particular groups. And I mean, in some ways, obviously, if you weren't born in America, you got a huge deficit on the Independence Day thing, right? Because, I mean, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but I mean, you grew up in America, you know Independence Day, right? Okay? But some of these other, or here, you know, you're a second language learner, the word dozen isn't necessarily a common word. It's not one of the first few that you're going to put into your vocabulary. How do they know dozen means 12, okay? So inevitably there's going to be biases in these things. Well, they have tried to remove cultural biases from these intelligence tests, and they've never been able to do so. They've never been able to get rid of it. They just keep finding a lot of cultural differences emerging on these things. Another way we could break down intelligence is fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence is the ability to quickly manipulate information to get jobs done in a hurry. And it turns out as people get old, fluid intelligence decreases a lot, okay? However, crystallized intelligence is like accumulated wisdom, you know, information you can work with. And it turns out that as people get older, fluid intelligence drops, crystallized intelligence goes up. And so at all stages, people are basically the same, right? Because you got a combination of more of this and less of that, and then later on, less of that and more of that. So it all balances out in the end. The Wechsler Intelligence Scale, as I said, the most popular one, as I said, it's centered at 100. And you ever take a stats class, you are going to learn this one. I promise you that. All right. This is a normal curve. And in this normal curve, the idea is that the average intelligence is 100. And so the height of this curve literally represents like frequency or how often it occurs. And so as you get away from 100, it occurs less and less and less and less and less. Okay? Such that when you get out to these two ends, they often label these two giftedness and disability. Okay? So you've got your two extremes in this sense. So people that are mentally retarded down there below 70. Now 70 is the point that somebody will be labeled as mentally retarded. But again, the key, in my opinion, is this adaptive behavior thing. That generally speaking, if somebody has an intelligence score less than 70, they will have problems adapting to everyday life. They will have problems, they will have difficulty solving problems. So somebody with an IQ of 70 probably does not understand how to pay their taxes, right? They cannot do the IRS stuff, right? It's just not in the ballpark or something. We find that within that 2%, by far the majority of people that are in that 2% are here at this level that is called mildly retarded. Somebody that is mildly retarded can probably, looking at probably live alone. They're probably going to need a little bit of supervision of sorts, somebody checking on them once in a while, but generally speaking, they're going to be good. So of 2%, most are in this category. But as you move your way down, you find that the people that are moderately mentally retarded can adapt less. They can solve fewer problems. And so often you're going to have to find living in group homes, perhaps, okay, rather than in individual apartments. And say, for example, in this group, maybe they're going to be able to have employment that they actually go to on their own. But here, maybe they can only work in a workshop, a sheltered workshop where they're put in very, very special jobs and special, with a lot of oversight. People that are severely mentally retarded, all of a sudden, I mean, every part of their daily life needs to be monitored. That perhaps they can be employed, but very, very, very limited tasks, very, very routine tasks, no more than that. And then finally, when you get to profoundly mentally retarded, it's absolutely 100% care is necessary. There's nothing you can do. No functionality. In some cases, their life is literally just being strapped to a bed all day long. That there is just nothing else that can be done. It's sad, but that's only a very. This is less than 1% of 2%, so a very, very small number at this point. Okay? So that's interesting. Intelligence testing is very controversial. It's so hard to figure out what it is we're measuring because we're obviously missing so much. But as I said, intelligence tests do predict success in life, unless you rigidly define success as income. But that's for another day. All right, cool. So where does it come from? And again, this is part of the reason that this is controversial again, is we want to think the world is fair. And I've already laid it out there. The world is not fair. At that moment, when egg met sperm, all right, just instant in time, look what was written. Your potential. You're somehow this thing that you're locked into was written in that instant. Then what happens across your entire lifetime, These individual bars may go up, may go down a little bit, but they're all locked into that moment in time. Okay? So it implies the world is not fair. It implies that it doesn't matter what little Jimmy does, little Jimmy is screwed. All right? There's just nothing that little Jimmy's environment could do. So here we got these studies where what they do is they compare. Here, for example, you take identical twins and they're raised in separate homes, and you give them IQ scores, okay? The IQ tests. They are 100% genetically related, but they grew up in a different house. And look at this. This line indicates that essentially they're exactly the same. Okay? These two scores, even though they never met each other, they lived in different homes, the same. Here we've got situations where there's absolutely no genetics at all, but they share environment. Okay? And you see very large differences between these groups. So it's really pretty powerful. The more genetics there are, 25% genetics, 50% genetics, 100% genetics. Okay? And there it is. Yeah, identical twins are crazy in what they share in common. Not just an intelligence score, but even specific things, music, math, sports, etc. Or here, this is scary. So they're going to take a kid. What am I here? Here is the relationship between a child and the parents that gave birth to them. Here is the relationship between a child, an adopted child, and the parents that gave birth to them, and an adopted child in the home they grew up in. Okay? Not a very interesting story. Here's where it's interesting at age 16. You see this? Here's a kid grows up in home with their own parents. Here's a kid never met the parent in their life. Okay? Never met the person that gave egg and sperm. What? An entire lifetime of living together made you that much more? Yeah, that's it. Look at this. You have spent your entire life in this house with these experiences. Okay? It's kind of sad because it's like, what's the purpose of adoption? What is the point? Because, look, what influence did an adoptive person have on that child's outcomes? Egg and sperm wrote the story. That's a scary business, right? It definitely flies in the face of the world is fair, because the world is not fair. We find that there are some absolute differences in the way the brains of girls and boys work. Okay? It turns out that boys and girls here on this mental rotation task, right? So here's which of these four is the same as this one? That's a hard task to do, isn't it? Thankfully, it's the first one, right? Thank goodness, it's the first one, so we don't have to deal with it. Well, it turns out that males that are straight males and straight females, there is a world of difference in their performance, okay? Males hugely outperform females on this particular task. But look at this. Gay men and lesbian women, they fall right in the middle. Right in the middle between straight male and straight female. That's weird, okay? Turns out that girls tend to be better at things such as spelling, locating objects, emotions. Girls tend to be more fluent, more sensitive. Boys tend to be better at spatial reasoning and math. But it's crazy. What happens is that in our society, there are small differences that have some truth to them. Some small differences. But what sometimes happens is that when a kid gets into second grade, and you know what? If you get a smiley face on your math test in second grade, don't you feel good about math? Yeah, doesn't that make you feel good? And later on, when you get up to about 8th grade and you get to pick your own classes, aren't you going to pick classes that make you feel good? Yeah, that's exactly what happens. So all of a sudden, itty-bitty tiny differences explode into huge differences. By the time you get to seniors in high school that take the SAT scores, the average male SAT math score is higher than the average female SAT math score. The average female verbal SAT score is higher than the average male verbal. So even though there are itty-bitty differences at the beginning, people self-select based on things that make them happy. Okay? And that's what it becomes. Now, about 15 years ago, the president of Harvard was asked to address the faculty about gender differences in science. Okay? Basically, why are there more males in science? And so he went through a variety of, society doesn't encourage these kinds of things. But then he said, and part of it is that boys and girls think differently. Oh my God, did the firestorm emerge. The president of Harvard was fired for saying boys and girls' brains work differently. And I'm like, why is that so controversial? The fact is we are a product of evolution. And across evolutionary time, males and females have been selected to do radically different things. So why would it surprise you that they think differently? If you've ever been married, you'll know they think differently. Okay? That's the fundamental of marriage. Okay? So the differences that we see are nowhere near the truth. They're just selection, and then going on from there. We find one major difference is that the majority of girls have an IQ score that clusters around this 100. When you get to the most extreme low scores and the most extreme high scores, you find a huge cluster of males. So even though the average score is the same for genders, you find that the males are going to be the ones that are going to most likely be out at the too far extremes. Oh, okay. So, wow, okay, cool. So, intelligence testing is hugely controversial. It is what it is. It's dumped out there on the internet so that you can test yourself at home. Take it with a grain of salt. There are many things that influence intelligence. And I can tell you, I have seen thousands of freshmen come and go from universities. And I am 100% going to tell you, it is not the dumb ones that fail out. It is not being dumb that make you fail out of school. It is the other factors such as actually getting the job done. Remember Christopher Columbus? Just doing it. Okay? So there are many, many more things to success in life than intelligence, but it helps. Right? All right, so next time we're going to start talking about memory. Okay? And as I promised you, it's fascinating because even more important than being able to remember something is being able to forget something. Right? Being able to forget things that are no longer important. All right? So, any thoughts, any things, any questions? No? All right, you know what? I think I'm going to do something here. Now, I had a real problem in one of my classes yesterday, and I had to get off on it. I went off on a rant about how disrespectful the classroom was, and so I'm going to tell you one. So in this room, if you want to, say, wear headphones and hang out on cell phones, just don't come to my class, okay? Because it is disrespectful, incredibly, to sit here and watch. See, my other classroom was like every person in the class. Here, it's not that bad. But still, if you want to do those things, feel free. Feel free. Go to the library and do it. Stay in your dorm room and do it. Don't do it here. It's disrespectful. I don't deserve it. Okay?